Oh God, I want to welcome each and every one of us here seated in this gathering this afternoon to this public lecture and list. What I would like to start by recognizing the presence of dignitaries and establishing the protocol for the gathering this afternoon. And I would like to do that by start. I would like to start by introducing or welcoming the person of our own Vice-Chancellor, Professor C. of Funds, and that is the person of Professor Terna Paise Agba. Welcome, sir. Our guest lecturer is also here seated this afternoon. Our is present is the person of Terna Omotola. Welcome, sir. From the University of You're welcome, sir. I would like to also recognize the president of the trust. I would also like to recognize the president of the registrar who is also not in the hall. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, I would also like to recognize the presence of the deans of faculties that are here seated. You're all welcome. I would also like to recognize the presence of the directors that are here seated. You're welcome. Academic and non-academic staff that are here seated already. Our guest lecturer, which was also recognized. This afternoon, members of the media team, ladies and gentlemen, you're all welcome to this. Okay, now I would like to call Vice-Chancellor.
I've seen the name of the account.
Sorry, the Dean of Famss.
Yeah, now anyone do it.
Special guest, honor and distinguished
Then send it now. Send me your
personality
account on
lecturer,
WhatsApp.
Professor Omotoso,
Thank you, Professor Omotoso.
my colleagues on the other side of aisle, professors, disability, happy about it. Let's present ADUN president, student. Gone to and they will come back.
Good evening to all here present. The Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Omotoso. Good evening to you. To all directors and academic and of course our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Omotoso. This event is packaged by the Faculty of Arts, Management of Social Sciences of ADUN, by abbreviation Famss, as a distinguished personality lecture. This is the first of its kind in its art, and as a tradition in other universities, we have decided to institute this event as one that over time will become a routine. And so we are very happy, and I'm also happy as I come to you with great honor and a sense of history that all of you are here today to experience or witness. Today's lecture is titled as we are going to another cycle of elections, and this event is meant to interrogate the speaker, we interrogate elections in Nigeria from a historical perspective, and try to tell us, give us a picture of what will be obtainable in the 2027 election. And so I welcome you, I honor all of you to pay attention to his discussions, his analysis, so that at the end of the day, we'll live here with wonderful knowledge. Thank you all, and once again, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, sir. It's another round of applause for our team. I'm moving to, because of the reason why we are here this afternoon, I would like to welcome the university orator to come and give the citation of the guest lecturer. The lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's jump on this for talk as it comes to the podium for the citation of the guest lecturer.
The Vice-Chancellor, sir, can you permit me to stand on the existing protocol? Professor Jeremiah Sola Omotoso Omotola was born at an appointed time to designated parents in the southwest region of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and he obtained a doctorate in the field of comparative African governance and University of Ibadan. Professor Omotola was a 2023 research and the Nordic Sweden. Of military coups in Nigeria. Professor Omotola had just completed his sabbatical leave in the office of the Director General, National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies at the National Assembly, Abuja. He is a professor of comparative politics at the Federal University of Ekiti, where he has served in various capacities, including as Deputy Vice in 2017, a visiting professor at the Beirut International Graduate School of African Studies, University of Beirut, Germany. He also had a postdoctoral fellowship in the Department of International Relations, University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa in 2014. As you can see, Prof is a very simple man by nature, but there is a very sophisticated, critical, and intellectually sagacious head that sits over. He is a highly sought-after expert democracy and peace building, governance and issues, policy, research and advocacy, and he has served in 2020 to 2021 as a lead consultant West Africa to the African Union International IDEA project on sustainable governance response to COVID-19 pandemic in Africa, a human security approach. He is also a regular consultant to many NGOs in Nigeria and abroad, and currently sits on the board of a few others, including as Vice Chairman of the board of the Year Project in Nigeria. Professor Omotola Germany, Belgium, and others. He has been external examiner to several universities at home and abroad, especially at the postgraduate level in places like the United Kingdom, South Africa, Ibadan, Ile-Ife, Zaria, Nsukka, Ilorin, and others. This in addition to serving as external assessor for professorial appointments at several Nigerian universities. His primary research interest is in comparative African governance institutions and politics, notably elections and democratization studies. And the Cambridge University Press Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Omotola is married to Princess Rosalie Olayemi Omotola, a marriage that has been blessed with wonderful children. May I please Professor Omotola.
Okay. My apologies, Vice-Chancellor and Chair of this important gathering. Please permit me to adopt the already established protocols. But even at that, I must recognize my brother, my friend, the Dean of the Faculty, Professor Agba. Thank you so much for this privilege. I thought the paper was going to be projected, but they just told me that you're having this, because I saw it being projected, they were coming in. So that's technology for you. So like this happen. But I hope you will give me access to your own. How many minutes do I have, please? 1 hour. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And the title I have been asked to let on is Nigeria's Democracy and the Fate of the 2027 elections. And by way of introduction, I opened by drawing our attention to the fact we all know that, but just as a reminder, that by 29th of this month, which is next year, this democracy we are talking about will be 27 years old. I'm sure we are all aware of that. So, we are having an uninterrupted process of democratization for the first time in the history of this for 27 years. I'm going to reflect on revolve around issues of 27 years of uninterrupted democratization in Nigeria. Because for me, I think that is a significant attainment, despite all the shortcomings, despite all the pitfalls that we can reference, that we are able to continue the process for 27 years unbroken. I think it's something that we need to celebrate, because it has never happened in the history of that process in this country. But as we are celebrating that feat, I think it also offers an opportunity for us to reflect about the journey, where we started, where we are, and the processes that we have followed to get to. Now, so I'm going to raise around these issues, either that are directly connected or indirectly connected, particularly the nature, the form, and the character of many of those issues that on what I call the promise of democracy. And when I speak about the promise of democracy, we were a very long period of military rule before democracy came around. So under what conditions, under what circumstances, there are certain promises that you just accept this democracy, and once you accept it, it will be the final solution to all the problems afflicting society, afflicting humanity in this our part of the world. So 27 years down the line, what has changed? The first thing I want us to engage. The second one is what I call the democratic processes. And you know, when you say democracy, it will not just fall down heaven. But in society, there are certain procedures that to bring democracy to reality. So, in the last 27 years, to what extent have we been faithful to those democratic processes in our own system? The third fundamental element, and this is very, very critical for me, is what I call democratic institutions. No institutions are governed, regulated by, democracy is governed, okay? Institutions. It is regulated by institutions. So, to what extent do we have those institutions solidified, being able to regulate and govern the process? The fourth dimension, next slide, is good that you have it now. I'm going to see in the course of this presentation that the question of attitude and behavior are fundamental. Democracy can only be sustained, can only be consolidated, we are supported by relevant democratic attitude and behavior. The fifth element is what I call demand for democracy, supply of democracy. When you speak you want to lay claim to that, those are economic. There is something called demand for democracy and supply of democracy. So we also need to reflect. This economics becoming, we're talking about the equilibrium. Yes, between demand democracy higher than supply of democracy or vice versa, then democracy cannot deliver on its promise. Then, of course, we talk about issues of democratic resilience, okay, and the prospect of democratic consolidation. So these 7 issues are those issues around which our engagement will revolve around in the course of this presentation. And I have noted that the nature, the form, and the character of these issues or if you like the implications for the 2027 general election that is approaching. For instance, I asked the question, are democratic institutions strong enough, including having adequate capacity to effectively administer the 2027 general elections? It's a fundamental question we need to address. Around elections, beginning from the electoral management body, I call them INEC, okay, beginning from political parties, civil society organizations, security agents or agencies, okay, including the courts. Do they have the requisite capacity? Are they strong enough to be able to deliver credible elections for us in 2027? If we move away from institutions, I single out the judiciary, except for institutions dependent and neutral to dispense electoral justice. Politics. We speak about judicialization, increasing judicialization of policy. We are talking about a situation whereby many political cases, especially from political parties, are now being taken to court for adjudication. So, it's well established in the literature that when you continue to overload the court with political loaded cases, you open the door for their compromisation, for their corruption, because you begin to mount political pressure on the to do this. intelligence and security agents adequately equipped, including the requisite capacity and professionalism to deliver electoral security. And electoral security is fundamental, is central. But are we really sure, can we really say that when we look at the structure, when we look at the organization, when we look at the operations of security agents in Nigeria today, can we really say they are professional enough, they are sufficiently equipped, politically to deliver election security? So again, the question of public trust in those democratic institutions becomes very, very important. So, and I ask the question, how much trust do Nigerians have in democratic institutions to effectively deliver credible, free, and fair election in 2027? We can quickly do the survey here if we want. Okay? And I just ask the question, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much trust do you without compromise? Okay? And you just rate it on a scale of 9 to 10. It's not the rating you are going to do that we are going to use. There are already established ratings out there that shows that Nigerians do not trust most of those democratic institutions. And when there's trust deficit anywhere, there's likely going to be crisis. Okay? So that's why I asked, how much trust do Nigerians have? So these are the without doubt play a major role in determining the fate of the 2027 election, whether the election is going to be positive or it is going to be negative. And that's my in this presentation. That these institutions that we are talking about, those that are happening, they are so my primary and again, by extension, I noted that none of institutions will be dependent on their autonomy, capacity. Democratization and democratic consolidation. So this framework is built to just solve the or establishing a democracy which can be complex and challenging. You know, I did talk about the process. There are procedures you need to follow. There are steps you need to adhere to establish a democracy. So that process of doing that is what we refer to as democratization. Now, when you now speak about democracy, I'm not talking about those popular. For the purpose of this, I'm talking a system of governance built on democratic ideas, principles, and practices. And these ideas, principles, they are many. You can talk about periodic free and fair elections, talk about rule of law, independent electoral management body, independent media, independent judiciary, and so on and so forth. Okay, that is what democracy. The ultimate destination, aspiration of every society. So when you say you are democratic, that you are democratizing, you are simply saying you want to move your system from an authoritarian, from a dictatorial system to one that is much more liberalized, okay, that is democratic, based on people's sovereignty. So, but the whole essence of doing that, of democratizing, is that you want to establish a democratic, okay? And the whole essence, you can say you have now consolidated, you have moved from a lower level of democracy to a higher level of democratic ideas. Stefan Lee. You are saying every actor at whatever level, the high, the medium, and the low, they play democratic game according to established rules. And when you are even cheated, and you know you have been cheated, you don't seek redress outside established rules. In other words, once you have been cheated, you want to go to court as an escort for seeking redress. So if you felt the election has been manipulated to get you out of the system, you don't because of that and carry on or become violent. You go to court, or you first go to explore internal mechanism for redress within your political party. Then if you are not satisfied, then you can say you want to go to court. So when you was saying that democracy becoming the only game in town, they are saying everything done in that society is done according to established democratic principles and norms. So democracy is the only game in town. All actors play according to the rules. Then again, consolidation demands the effective functioning of democratic institutions. So to say your democracy has been consolidated, it means all those institutions I have mentioned, like your INEC, electoral body, your legislature, judiciary, all of them, they are functioning effectively, delivering on their. Okay? Now, a democratic economy is also okay. Threats will be emerging from time to time. There is the ability of your system to absorb the threat, to absorb the shock, repeat and make progress again. So, consolidated democracies are expected to be resilient. Okay? Withstand every reversal threat being thrown at them. So the possibility of democratic erosion is close to zero. It's not even on the table. Not when you are talking about consolidated democracy. Okay, so ability to weather the storm, survive and remain standing. That is what consolidation is all about. Then I have another. Among them, the key linkage is that the same actors and institutions are involved across board. When you talk about election, for example, the main actor is the electoral management body, but other actors are involved. You know, the electoral cycle, we have three phases: pre-election, election, and post-election. At the pre-election phase, there are many issues that are involved. The legislature, for example, we pass of the election. They just passed out 2026 was of February this year. Okay, so the legislature is involved. Political party field candidates. For them to field candidates, they will conduct party primaries. They will do party conventions to put their secretary. So the point I'm just making is that all those institutions that are involved in election, they are also the same institutions involved in democracy, in democratic consolidation. And that is why we cannot be talking about Nigeria's democracy and the fate of 2020 election without seeing the connection among these various concepts as our framework of analysis. That we are still talking about democracy in Nigeria today. These are opportunity for inspection and prospection. And when I speak about retrospection, then we have to look back to see now. There's no way we can do this without talking about the democratic movement in those days that led to this current wave of democracy we are talking about. And when you speak about the democratic movement, you have to talk about the external actors. There's a big industry out there. They call it democracy promotion, or democracy industry, or if you like, democracy promotion industry. It's a big industry. So from the capital cities of major European countries, in London, US, and some other places. Okay, so they were the ones that started championing. You need to be attached. You know, this way also was of the Berlin Wall. Okay, at the end of the Cold War. Okay, and even values must completely relevant. Of ticket, okay, for you to be able to access development assistance from those developed countries of the world. So, because the way they package it up, look, once you democratize, once you embrace democratization as part and parcel of this new world order, you get all this kind of benefit. Now you saw that many organizations began to emerge across many African countries, Nigeria inclusive. And that was the era where civil began to blossom, okay? They began to proliferate. Many of them that we didn't know before, they began to emerge, challenging military dictatorship and so on and so forth. So the point I'm making is that when you are going to speak about 27 years of democratization in Nigeria, we must know the history in terms of those democratic movements with their internal and external dimension. Then the promise of democracy. I mentioned earlier that the way they package it was that once we have this democracy, that is the solution to all the problems. In the book Matthew, apologies to those who are not Christians here, if we have any. You know, there's a verse there, they say, the that will be added to you. That was the way they packaged this democracy. That look, just accept this democracy first, and once you accept it, every other thing will be added onto it. So, 27 years after, Ask yourself, from your community experience, from your family experience, from your state experience that you are familiar with, will you say every other thing has been added since we have this democracy since 1990? Level that the process was garrison. You have something to do with the military career, so I'm sure you know garrison concept better than I do. It's a military concept, okay? So that our development process has been garrison. Some other scholars argue that it has been tracked at the level of you know, you will complete. Other people argue that it is appear to be developed. For example, Admiralty, it was not as if I knew that the election that brought me to power was corrupt, was not free and fair. And he said because of that, I'll go ahead and institute the electoral law in the country. And then, that was what he said. And the fantastic recommendations of those things were never implemented. Okay, so talking about the democratic process, we are saying there are phases. There are some moments where we had a lot of as if we were going to get things right. Okay, at a point in time, Yaga Africa did a mobilization and they got this not too young to run the they see the amount of money down again. So the point is that the processes have been mixed up and down. Now, when you speak about democratic institutions, if I'm going to stay here, we will not leave today. But I just find a way. Will you say these institutions are sufficiently autonomous? Because the question of independence, the question of autonomy of these institutions are very, very vital. If you take INEC and the judiciary, for example, we are autonomous. Do you say they have the independence? Yes, INEC in recent time, they charge their funding to the consolidated fund directly. So, much financial pressure has been laid. One of the fundamental conditions was that they should make the appointment process to be competitive. That let it be advertised. The way you advertise when you want to appoint vice-chancellors, and you state the criteria. Like if you want to appoint INEC chairman and those national commissioners, let those positions be advertised, let the requirement be specified. So if you are confident of yourself that you fulfill those conditions and you have the integrity to match it up, then you apply. Then they said a neutral body will have to be the one that is supervised, but that aspect was thrown out. So it's going to be difficult for Nigerians to believe that you can ever have an INEC that is truly independent and autonomous in actions, as long as we retain the current process of its composition. So that's for INEC. Then if you take judiciary, for example, all those high Supreme Court judges, they are appointed by the president. Okay? So those are fundamental issues. And even, let's even assume that they have the autonomy. Do they have the professionalism and the political neutrality to act? Okay, without studying the body language of the president or the body language of the governor. At times, the president will not even talk to them to say, go and do this or go and do that. They say it's the body language they have read. You know, so the point I'm just making is that if you look at the legislature, the current legislature, can we really say we have a legislature that is fully independent, that can hold the government accountable, the executive accountable for its actions and not inactions? I have my reservations about that. And if you want us to be giving illustrations under this 10th assembly, there are a lot of examples that we can give. Okay, so the point I'm making is that democratic institutions, they are at the heart of all these processes. Either you talk about election, you talk about democratization, or you talk about consolidation. All these institutions are central to it. As long as their independence is not guaranteed, as long as their professionalism is not guaranteed, as long as their capacity, we cannot vouch for it, then they will always be inhibited in terms of what they can deliver for the democracy process. Now, so the point I have made about those institutions is that all of them across board, they have mixed scorecards. At times, they demonstrate strength. Some other times, they demonstrate weakness. But beyond strength or weakness, some other elements of those institutions is that they have been politicized. Some other scholars will argue that they have short. And institutions are capable to operate independently. They have to study the body language of somebody. They have to take instruction from somebody. Though you will I'm not a second that is mounting pressure on INEC officers or judicial officers to be corrupt. Okay? So when you have all those, then they are detached. When I say they are detached, they don't care. What becomes of you and I is not in their own calculation. They want yes, please, thank you, sir. You know, so those are some of the issues we need to talk about. Then, when you now speak about trust in democratic institutions, which I mentioned, which is very, very critical, there's a survey that I'm going to show, one by Afro-Barometer, I'm sure many of us will know Afro-Barometer, and another by Yaga Africa. So we'll see that very shortly. Now, across all these institutions, they have undergone a change of reforms and innovations. Okay? If you look at INEC, for example, at the point they said technology is the way. But every technology they brought, when it came to application in the last election, they said there were technical hitches. Okay? And the question is, you hardly get accountability. If there were technical hitches at that national level, it's a national embarrassment. And somebody should have been made to pay for it. But no accountability in the process. Okay? So, the point I'm making is that if you look at judiciary, if you look at INEC and other institutions, they have always done one reform or the other, one innovation or the other. But when it comes to the application of their own law, they tend to run away. They tend to shy away from it. Then there are many anti-corruption institutions or agencies that have been established to look into some of these issues. What are they doing? What have they been able to deliver? Even those anti-corruption agencies too, they have been over-politicized. And some of them are even much more corrupt than some of these other institutions that we are saying they should checkmate. Now, democratic attitude and behavior. You know, I did say that one of the hallmarks of democratic consolidation is that democracy has become the only game in town. And by that, all actors, all players, at whatever level, you want to play the game according to established rules and regulations. Again, what I can say here is that between 1999 today, I think we have witnessed some improvement in terms of democratic attitude and behavior, because we now see those who are aggrieved pursuing their grievances through established mechanisms, going to court and stuff like that. But that's how far we can go. That is not to say that everything about attitude and behavior is now perfect. We still have pockets of unconventional responses anywhere you come in the country. Violent protests of diverse forms. Even those insurgencies we talk about, either kidnapping, either whatever, is a form of violent protest. It shows that you have not, that those actors have not embraced conventional I spoke about democracy. They are referring those good things that they promise that democracy will deliver. And what are those things they promise that democracy in Nigerian parliament we call it dividends of democracy? That once we have this, a lot of dividends will follow. So we expect drastic reduction in the level of poverty, in the level of unemployment, in the level of inflation, in the cost of living. We expect better security of lives and property. These are some of the things we expect, okay, under demand for democracy. And those are the things we promise. And that's why when you see those politicians, when it is time for electionary campaign, those are the things they can read on the things that they will do. Those are the things people said they want. That is demand for democracy. Now, when you now match it with what they are able to deliver, out of what they brought. So what they are able to deliver is what we refer to as supply of democracy. So when you match the two, you realize that there's a wide gap between demand and supply. And once you have that mismatch, that is what we call democratic disequilibrium. And anywhere democratic disequilibrium is pervasive, the road to consolidation is still very, very far, because it can generate many other things. For example, it is one of the main explanations for vote trading, okay, where you buy and sell votes. That democracy is not delivering on those promises it made from the beginning. Now, democratic resilience and the prospect of democratic consolidation. After 27 years, and in spite of its many people, I think the process is still alive. And I mentioned this earlier, that is worthy of being celebrated. But for how long can the process survive of complete threats of reversal, rooted mainly in the weaknesses of core democratic institutions? That's the fundamental question. Yes, we are happy, we are celebrating that we have 27 years, the longest lifespan whatsoever about election and democracy in Nigeria. But we have those reversal waves coming, kept coming. For how long will this system continue to? We are not able to find a permanent solution to those threats of reversals, because all those democratic institutions that I have mentioned is that they are weak, is that they are politicized, is that they are corrupt, and so on and so forth. Now, that the 27 election we hold in the midst of these contradictions makes this engagement more pertinent, and that is why I think, for me, we must commend danger signal, okay? Though the time is very short, but it's never too late. I think we need, if we are going to do election under those circumstances that we have painted, where the economy of the country is in a deep mess, and where the core institutions that are going to handle the process are not fully autonomous, they are politicized, they are corrupt, they are captured, and people have lost faith, people have lost confidence, people have lost in them. It's a red flag that I think we should not joke with. And that's to the finance, there's still one section before this, after this. Now, the penultimate section of 2027 election taking place is circumstances. I say many factors will determine the fate of the 2027 election, either for good or otherwise. We have already highlighted some of the pathologies of Nigeria's democracy. Those issues I have mentioned, those deficiencies, those are the pathologies. Now, we need to take lessons of past elections. They are very, very critical. And what are the key issues from those elections? We know has been established in the mainstream literature that those elections were they were poorly administered, okay, in most cases, credited with poor electoral integrity. Then we have increasing utilities of politics, and I think I have mentioned it. Then ethnicization of voting, you know, voting along ethnic line, along religious line, you know. If you want to get all these pathologies about those elections, you can read election observers reports on various elections, and you will see those issues they have highlighted about our elections. Now, but beyond that, when we talk about the capacity and independence of democratic institutions, let's just take INEC and the courts. For example, I've spoken about the political nature, okay, of the appointment of the head of INEC, even the Justice of the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice of Nigeria. Those things are political appointment, whether we like it or not. And depending on the occupant of those offices, the autonomy, the integrity of those institutions can easily be compromised. Now, that is about autonomy now. Then when you talk about capacity, if you look at INEC, for example, for the general election, I can tell you, INEC will not recruit less than 2 million ad hoc electoral officers. The total staff strength of INEC, I'm not sure it's up to 5,000. I doubt it. It is not far, no, it's not. And they will recruit ad hoc staff, those who either as youth corps or university staff, you know, that will assist them in the conduct of the elections. So what are the issues here? It's always been the practice. So what are the issues there? Many issues. The first one has to do with the process of recruitment. How do they recruit those ad hoc staff? Do they advertise? That will be invited with the one, okay, the job. I have been involved where those who were trained will not be the one to be deployed for the election. So the process of recruiting those ad hoc staffs is very, very important. Then the training and professionalism of those ad hoc staff is also very, very important. How much control does INEC have over those ad hoc staff? Very limited. So they rely on their parent institutions to exercise oversight. Okay? But let me shock you. Most of those parent institutions are part of the corrupt intermediate, okay, between INEC and those ad hoc staff. I can tell I'm a university professor. I have been involved in election in many, I want to tell you my story in Rivers State with Governor Wike when he was governor. So don't let us go there. So I've been involved in election. I know what I'm talking about. And I know there are universities. Many of them now, they have agents. Now, the election is next year. They will have been lobbying people in Ireland. This is where we want to because they in those across the leading parties. So they will go to party and negotiate. We are coming for this election. These are the things we need. They will go to party. So they will take from party A and take from party B. I'm speaking authoritatively. This will be the highest level of minor of the university will be aware, and they will be part of the sharing of that loot. So, and these are, why am I saying this? These are the people you expect to help you oversight those ad hoc staff you are recruiting from the system. Whereas they are the intermediaries mediating between them and those correct politicians out there. So, there are a lot of issues that I think if we don't pay attention to issue of capacity and independence of IDEM in some of these dimensions that I've mentioned, then the 2027 election is hanging, the fate is hanging in the balance. Now, citizens' trust in democratic institutions, which is also closely related to the first point I just made. INEC and usually, for example, the trust level is very, very low. And I mentioned that for barometer. You know, no, let me just say this. In the last survey they did in 2023, how many of us know Afrobarometer? Okay. Leading pool agencies all over the world. Okay, it was actually developed by Michael Bratton at what's this university now? I will remember. Don't worry, in the US. Okay, and they are now in partnership with Center for Democracy and Development in Ghana and with Noinpool. Noinpool is owned by Okunjo Iweala, based in Abuja. So they are in partnership with them. So they were the one that did the last round of pool in 2023 across Africa. That was the 9th round of survey they were doing in Africa. And the report from that survey in 2023, they asked Nigerians how much trust they have in INEC. I mean, in the police, then in police, INEC, and the courts. Okay? Surprisingly, 15%, only 15% said they have any trust in the police. Okay? 10% said they have in INEC. 28% said they have trust in the courts. Now, that's all. And these are about the 3 most important institutions in the democratic process, in the election process. And Nigerians are saying we don't trust them. And once they don't trust them, it has many implications. It can generate apathy. When you lose interest completely in the electoral process, you are not interested, whatever happens, so be it. You withdraw. And once there is apathy, then voters come out, we go down. Okay? So now that is just for those period of 2023. But when you now look at the data beyond that, the first one they did in 2000, 62% and I think that was good. That was election. Now when you go to 20, in 2005, it rose to 21. In 2008, it rose to 28. In 2013, 33. For traditional rulers, and surprisingly, you know what Nigerians said they trusted who? They still they trusted who? They said they are pastors. They are religious leaders. That's what they said they trusted most. So when you have a situation like this, is a big danger signal that we need to talk about ahead of the 2027 general election. Now, Africa, which is one of the leading, if not the CSOs in Nigeria. No, even beyond Nigeria. Now, they did a survey late last week. Surprisingly, 77% of people believe in democracy as a form of government. In the 2020, police station, they have fear of insecurity. I don't know whether I will be caught in the web of violence or something like that. And that they don't even trust that if they vote, that their account will vote. So what are they saying? They are simply saying we do not trust electoral institutions. Security agents have been indicted. INEC has been indicted. Because those were the two reasons they gave. Whether these are issues that speak directly to the question of political apathy and to the question of voters turned out. Now, concerned with technopolitics, you know, we say we are dealing with ANC now, and it's the age of technology. Is it not so? So we should begin to apply technology to everything. Fantastic. And INEC has been going along that line. You know, that's why they introduce beavers, all those electronic something into it. But beyond the introduction, have they been faithful to the application of those innovations? The answer is to give. Then there's no one can be talking about 27 without reflecting on the use and misuse of power of incumbency. This is very, very fundamental. There are stipulations on the Electoral Act that talks about equality of access to media. Okay, by all political parties. Is that what we are witnessing in Nigeria today? Use your own various states, okay, to judge and see whether that is the reality. Now, the question of party primaries and candidate selection is very, very fundamental. They just did one now, ABC just did one. I'm sure you must have been reading some of the reports across many states of the federation. I watched one. They were counting 1, 200, 230. And they went ahead and announced the results. In my own state, from Kogi East, the Ghana people, the incumbent senator, is I don't know how to pronounce it. He was waiting at the with his people for the primary, and they announced results in Lokoja. Without any, they just handpicked somebody and said the person has won. And they were on the field waiting. So, when you have those kind of situations, these are issues that generate bitterness, that generate tension, that generate intra-party conflict. And once you don't manage that very well, it can become another thing. So they are laying the foundation for crisis in the next election. Once you don't get your party primaries and candidate selection right, but we are even talking about APC not doing it well. We don't even know what other parties are doing. So it's not only about APC. It's across board. Then the question of regular public finance, but because my time is almost long. Now, widespread insecurity, this is very, very important. Everywhere you turn in the country, northeast, northwest, north central, southeast, southwest, south, there is a dominant form of insecurity that is prevalent. Okay? So, and it is under that terrain that we want to conduct a general election. Okay? I know I did a report for 3 organizations on the election, and I know dear people are afraid whether they can be safe when they come out for election. So when you want to conduct election under that kind of situation, where you have widespread availability of small arms and light weapons, banditry, kidnapping, and so on, I think we need to be. Then I said voting behavior matters. What are the factors determining the voting behavior of Nigerians? If you go to the literature, ordinary emphasis will be on issues such as political ideology, the issue of economy, the issue of security, and so on and so forth. But in Nigeria, it is mainly identity politics, ethnicity, regionality, food buying, and so on and so forth. When you allow those things to continue that, the voter party and come out. You know, apathy is the disenchantment with from 2007 2011, 34 in 2019, and 26 in 2023. And if you look at those all-cycle elections conducted, the last election in Anambra, it was 10.5% turnout. Go and check it. The Labour voters turnout in the last government election in Anambra, it was 10.5%. The one they just did in Abuja, it was around 12 or 13% turnout. So that tells you that the thing is going down. And what manner of policy is? You have are voting, and the winner will not even get more than at most 50% of that 20%. So how many, what is the proportion of the population that actually, so what is the legitimacy of that government? These are issues, I think, the state of opposition politics, I'm sure you know a lot about this because of my time. Then regulation of fake news. It is 3 dimensions, either misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And you know this the age of generative AI. They can use AI to generate content that do not exist. You know, so we need this. It is June 20th, and Osun is August. I don't know the date in August. Okay, so is going to be a dress rehearsal of what to expect in the general election in 2027. So I think that should be the starting point of our emphasis, of our advocacy, to make sure we get it right in those states. And the most important, whatever they do there, they 27. Now, on the basis of that, what is my verdict? On the basis of this point that I have raised, what is my verdict regarding the fate of the 2027 election? I have noted that from the foregoing prognosis, the fate of the 2027 election is hanging in the balance. The many pathologies of 27 years of democratic Nigeria does not inspire much confidence. Though multidimensional, the relevance of democratic disequilibrium seems to pose the greatest threat, rooted mainly but not necessarily with economic issues. So also the troubled history of electoral governance administration since 1999 worsens the autonomy, capacity, and professionalism of key democratic institutions actors also remains suspect. 2 main indicators of the above: performance evaluation studies report that we still push something, official and unofficial. As member of civil society, as member of the general public, I think we have a big role to play. And what are those roles? So I told what I call some considerations. What should each core institutional actors do? For me, I think security is a major threat to that election. And that's why I'm calling for what I call national security plans for electoral integrity by all actors. So the way you secure election ordinarily is different. But when election is taking place within an environment deeply afflicted by deeply insecurity, I think we need the national security plans for electoral integrity. So, and those other recommendations I have listed here. So, appreciation. Yeah, I am indebted to the Vice-Chancellor.
Thank you. Please another round of applause for Prof. Thank you, Professor Omotola, for that wonderful lecture. This time we'll give 10 minutes for questioning. You want to ask questions or contribution, so please leave it to me. It's fine.
Thank you. You're online. Yes. Yes. Thank you, my Vice-Chancellor. Thank you, Professor Omotola. I would like to write on the experience you shared with us. If you look at the hall, the camera can move around to show that we have our students here. And look at it more. The fact that students here is around 8 brackets of democracy in this country. If you listen to Prof while presenting, he mentioned issues that made civil society labor to demand for us to have democracy. In primary school, towards when the military era was about ending, are now asking that it's not better if you compare that with the ending part of your lecture. Students here will be thinking it's not better we have a military-led administration rather than the not so soothing picture of our current state of democracy, where even some of our lecturers, those teaching these students, painting good picture of what is happening inside is better than what we have in our democracy here. So I'd like you to just oppose and speak from your experience. If military regime will be better for us. Secondly, sir, you have mentioned the role while the service participated in the election, were the ones that the first set of biometrics that we now have as current background of our database in our register. Then forward, I think I was in 2015, 2019, but I voted in 2023, and I saw that still the data we gather back then that's still being used. And that will affect what we currently call election turnout. If we notice, in this current election, 2027, INEC came out and said they want to pay the register. But all stakeholders said no, they should leave it the way it is, that is too close to election. The data that we are using to compare the turnout in the election, I don't think it's correct in that we have people that are there, still there, listed in the election register, and we use this to compare the number of persons that came to vote. I think we should become realistic if the register is reviewed, then we can have something close to the reality of election turnout. Thank you.
Can you please give to the other speaker?
Go first. Yes.
My name is Professor Omotola. I think interested in two of the issues you highlighted, which are very important. But I want to speak to the issue I'm not concerned about, which is first, OTB, second, is his voters' apathy. Now, why did I think that? I believe that these two fall under the category of followership. And I've noticed I've been participating in the election, I voted in 2015 election. But before I could go to 2015 election, I had to take pass. I had to call my father to grant me pass. I schooled in Landmark University. I asked for that pass because my father was supporting me. The school refused us generally to vote. Even when some students were saying we need to vote, they said they would not, so we had to call our parents to give us exit. And why am I doing it? We keep lashing leadership in all political conflicts. But the leadership in the world generally does not take up to 30%, or if I may say, up to 5%. I'm on the concern of followership. I have observed the election from 2015 to date. Even the last election, me and my students in this institution, we tried to go out on our CS campaign and it was stopped. Why am I bringing this up to you? Because I have the opportunity to speak. I feel the followership in the country is suffering from what you just stated. That's the voting behavior and the withdrawal from election. Because for your generation, which I saw some of you, like my elder ones and my dad, we understood the power of election because our parents were coming out for protest. But what happened? You get this when most of our structures were disabled. SUG were disabled. In some schools like Ghana, it's called SM. We often allow our fathers was to do, were taken out because they experienced it. We were not allowed, like in Landmark, we were not allowed to vote for who leads us as children. But growing up, after a Landmark, I was fortunate to pursue my mission in UI, which I was able now to enjoy politics. That was where I learned how to participated and won my election to become the minister of welfare, just as Salam and Baka. That exposed me to how properly you can send letters to authority, ask for what is duly right. What am I saying? In University of Ibadan, I got a chance of election that what election for that. Please go ahead. Growing up, many of us are not interested anymore. And we're youth. Majority of the Nigerian population are youth. If you check our electoral and withdrawing, aside from election, let's talk about the society, traditionally, economically, businessly, educationally. We battle with the senior generations to even hear us out. Some positions are strictly for selections and not election. So we are saying that if we followers as a society who are paying input in our daily activities, create a system where children growing up, young ones, can see that democracy can be done effectively and efficiently and precariously. We won't shy away from it. So I think followership in Nigeria needs to be shown more touchlight as well as leadership. Thank you very much.
Please, for those of us that want to also ask a question, let them come to the question.
Let them come here.
The next person, who is it? Okay.
My name is Professor. I want to appreciate Prof for explaining the pathology and then the malady of our democratic and political setting. We've done well indeed. Taking a look at your recommendations, I want to know, will that grant us 100% free election, or is there anything that will do it differently to get it right with the age of the pathological and the malady of the political and the democratic setting? Thank you.
Please, Prof, will take these questions, we'll answer this question first, then later we'll take the other ones.
Yeah, thank you so much for those questions, for those comments. It shows that you actually showed interest in the presentation. And I'm not taking that for granted. From the first person, the military regime, for me, it is a no-no. There's that dictum, popular saying, that the worst democracy you can find anywhere is better than the best military regime you can find. But beyond that popular saying, there are established studies that have shown that there is nowhere, not for an extended period of time, where military regime has brought about sustainable development. At the early stage, you reference the Sahel and West Africa. That was when I went to research in Sweden for 3 months. Okay, the reincarnation of different groups in Africa. Now I have a paper with another journal assessing the performance of those military regimes since they took over. Those countries, things have deteriorated. The security situations of those countries have deteriorated. Forget about some of those things you see on YouTube, and they are generative AI. They are not real. And that is part of the troubles that we are facing with this AI. It has its positive element, but it also has its negative element. Those people who were celebrating the takeover, now they are singing a different tune. Okay? So just go and look at the statistics. So don't even think about the idea of the military coming back. If you ask me, I'm doing a study, I don't know, it's been long, I don't know when I'm going to complete it, but I know to complete it. And the title is Democracy Actually Backsliding in Africa? Is democracy actually backsliding? You know, there has been so much fuss in the last couple of years about democratic backsliding in Africa. And leading scholars, they kept celebrating that. And I kept reading those studies, I kept reflecting. And I want to respond and challenge that established wisdom in the literature. And my argument is simple. Cannot fall. My argument is they are responding to this liberal form we are talking. But if you ask an average African or Nigerian about their own meaning, about their own understanding of democracy, will it align with that liberal conception of democracy? So we need, I mean, I don't know, is it historical revisionism or something like that? That will get it better. to begin to challenge some of those established body of knowledge. Okay, but that's not the purpose of this gathering. But I'm just referencing that for us to know that don't let us celebrate the military regime in whatever guise it is. Because if you look at the record of human rights, and I've seen a study by Professor Omotola, his inaugural lecture in the Bible, Military Occupation and Social Classification. That's the title of that lecture. He talked about what we call military government ratio. He said, take the budget of every military government in Nigeria and see how much. Okay, and the military extractive ratio, the difference between the two. Against development. So don't let us go to that area. Data on voter register. I don't think you are totally correct. You are partly correct with respect to this 2023 election, because by the time I next the power there and increase in the area of stronghold of the ruling party. So is that mistrust? And look, the time is so short. We will not have sufficient time to qualify, to cross-check, to verify what we have done. And to win election, it begins from that register. So those who are not just opposing for the sake of opposing, is because they do not have trust in INEC to do what we fear across the board. But beyond that, the 2020, the last election, 2023 election was not conducted using the voter register. No, that's not correct. Before every election, INEC updates that register, and I know for sure it was updated for 2023 general election. But for this 2027, they have refused, they have updated. And because INEC was not so sure of itself, it has succumbed to that result. Voter behavior, yes. But your experience of Landmark University, it comes under external constraint. Okay? But if you are so determined about civic activism, why didn't you leave Landmark University and go to another university where you have the space? You see, the point I'm making is that at times we are not willing to make sacrifices. When we are confronted with those external constraints, we succumb. Let me tell you, as an assistant lecturer, I have been in the university for less than 2 years. Okay, at the University of Illinois, and I challenged the power that be. As an assistant lecturer, and they called me to an informal, I wouldn't call it a panel because it was not formal, and there was not the free say. And I told them, I walked away from this job. I resigned to start another job. How many of you will do that these days? We don't want to make sacrifices. We are always afraid of what to call. But I know what God has deposited in me. I know I will get. I'm not saying this for you to. I'm telling you what they did to you in Landmark University. If you were really determined to make a difference, you have challenged that establishment. You said saying when you believe in us, we should be ready to make sacrifices. We should be able. A guy just took, I hope we are aware, a guy just took INEC to court. And he just won the case, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Now it's been established that individuals can challenge INEC on election results. When you are not satisfied with the process, the court has just given the judgment now, and people are celebrating it. But he took one individual. It's an evil guy. You know the case. Now, it's just one individual. Before the interest. That you are not a political party, you are not a candidate. Therefore, but I said, no, that this election result affects my life. And he went to court. Now everybody is celebrating it now. Now we know we have a legal basis as an individual to go to court. But it took one individual the courage, the sacrifice to do that. So the point I'm making is that when we believe in something, please let us be ready. Yes, we are taught to be our parents, to respect them and things like that. But there are systemic ways by which, strategic ways you can disagree with them without being disrespectful. Okay? There are ways you can do it. Especially once you have become an adult, 18 and above, there are ways you can do it, but don't disrespect or insult your parents. 100% turnout or election credibility is not available anywhere in the world. We talk about minimum standard of credibility, that any election that measures up to that standard, we take it as credible. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Okay, we'll take the other question. I think somebody raised. Okay, yes, give that to me. I'll come back to the Prof. Come on, give me the mic.
You go forward.
So, sir.
Okay, please permit me to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Dr. A.K. Endurance, and I have a very simple question. You know, it is believed or traditionally that academics are custodian of truth, ethics, integrity. And that is why I believe that the position of the recording officers and possibly the INEC chairman, you know, is strictly with academics because of these and integrity issues. Society, and sometimes when I, you know, interact with my mates on what is happening in Nigeria, you know, how the country is going, they will always say, oh, why sit down on our way they read the election, because he has known that I'm into academics. Now, my question now is, what strategic roles can academic institutions, you know, play to strengthen this ethical accountability among academics that are involved in election administration? Thank you very much.
Please give the mic to me.
Good evening, all. Vice President. Thank you, thank you, Prof. My questions are threefold. Yet, you did assert that 25 years after money politics, corruption, and like the president, state president, and the wicked kind of people we end up leading this election in Nigeria. How do we correct all of this? Then thirdly, as we identify, we bring out many factors that will either shape this election or not. As scholars, as researchers, what role is
Vice-Chancellor, I need to start by this protocol. Thank you, Professor Omotola, for the lecture. I have
here. And the first question I want to ask is this. Under the presidential system that we are here, there seems to be so what we call the strong man syndrome. Once somebody is elected as a local government chairman or even a member of the House of Assembly, probably president, because so strong that nobody can challenge him. And that I believe because of the emphasis with the presidential system from the places of the executive. I am asking, in the light of that, is it not possible for us to consider the possibility of adopting parliamentary system of government? That's number one question. Number two question. The people did say anything about electronic voting. If you put one to someone or one to send one to somebody, after you have done the first one, if you try to do the second one, they will tell you, double transaction. Wait. That means that the system can recognize even when you are recharging your phone. If you put in the first number, it will work. You try to put it again, it will not get out. So it is possible to work out the electronic. Why are we not considering that aspect of it? Thirdly, I don't know if I missed it, but I think I didn't hear you say anything about the goal of the executive. Maybe facilitating or otherwise the success of this 2027 election. I say so because, as you know, the INEC, the chairman is appointed by the president. And we also see a situation where other parties will have engaging the measure of executive was when the president Buhari. Well, with regard to the president government, he didn't say anything about that. I want to know that examination of the deliberate act.
Very much, sir. Prof. Yes, you are to this one before we take the
you know, when you want to take staff from any university for election duty, they write the Vice-Chancellor of the university officially. So the Vice-Chancellor must grant permission to INEC to use the staff. And once that has been done, INEC will now tell them the number of staff they want. But because there are vested interests, there are certain things I don't want to say publicly. Even the process of selecting those from the university is politicized. You must be seen as the Vice-Chancellor's god before you can be included in that list. And the crisis begins from there. In my university, I have seen instances where those who were trained, the VC changed the entire list and put his own people. Okay? So, it makes it extremely difficult for some of those universities, when you have those kind of leadership, to play a positive role in oversighting those staff that are going. I've seen where it is so bad, I'm sorry I have to say certain things. But off record, please. I hope I'm not being recorded. I have been involved in an election where we got to INEC office in Admiralty, and they started sharing dollars to all of us. Okay? Of course, that was my first experience. I have never done for many before, but I've never seen that. And they started sharing dollars. And trust me, some of my colleagues were the one coordinating. And when they brought it to me, practicing. But yet it is everything that we are practicing, which is a lot of deficiencies and issues with INEC and how we can address them to get into the election. There are some of them that will take immediate action, some intermediate long term. For example, now if we are going to argue that we want to change the process of electing and appointing an next chairman, it's not something we can do overnight. We have to go back to the constitution to look at relevant provisions to get it amended. And you know the process of amending the British constitution can be very, very quick and time consuming. But there are some of the issues we can do in the short term. Okay? For example, I need to increase its collaboration, its partnership with other key institutions in the electoral process. I know they have ISES, okay? They have a platform for that. But how effective that platform is what I don't know. But I think they need to invest more in that. Then in the area of political education too, they also need to do more in that respect. Now, presidential system and strongman system. Professor, for me, the problem is not so much about the system. You know, I'm sure you are familiar with that popular saying of forms of government. Let folks contest. What is best administered is best. So, parliamentary democracies that are also malfunctioning, and we have presidential democracies that are also malfunctioning, taken over by strong men, okay, corrupted by deep state politics and stuff like that. So the point I'm making is that even if we change institutions today and we don't change attitude, we don't change behavior, and we don't empower those institutions, nothing is going to change. So for me, and then when you look at the president, okay, that is why the three arms of government, they are almost at par on the same level. Okay, and that is why executives cannot make certain appointments without ratification of the legislature. That's why executives cannot do budgets without the ratification of the legislature. The legislature has the power of the boss. Okay, so we cannot begin to talk about those external constraints that is not making it possible or that is making it difficult for the legislature to exercise its power as conferred on it by the Constitution. Because all the three acts of government were establishment of the Constitution, and their powers and functions clearly stipulated. So for me, presidential system, the way we practice it, has inbuilt mechanisms for checks and balances. The judiciary is also there. If you don't agree, you go to court and challenge. And we have seen government go to court, challenge the federal government, and Tinubu did it as governor in Lagos State. And he won. So what has changed? Remember, Pastor, we had local government allegations in Lagos State for almost 2 or 3 years. Because Tinubu created what they call local development area, something like that. And he said it. So eventually after 3 years, he won and they paid all the money. Though he made sure Tinubu didn't get that money, but immediately he left, the money, everything was paid. So it's just that the current crops of politicians that we have, I don't know their motivation. I don't know what is driving them. It's just about themselves. There are sufficient consumer provisions and provisions for them to act independently of the executive. So the problem is not those people. Electronic voting. I mean, used to have electronic voting, but I talked about technopolitics, and I talked about reforms and innovations, and I talked about the growth of beavers and those. So once I have said all those things, it has captured electronic voting. However, I know the Electoral Act 2026 contains certain, so I don't know what exactly has been changed, but I know that clause has been reframed. I will have to check and confirm after this presentation. But when I was speaking in terms of technopolitics, so I also have that in mind. Now, role of the ESCOs. Again, I was conscious when I was talking about the use and misuse of power of incumbency. It's all about the executive. I'm sure you heard me when I was saying that. So I talked about the executive. I may not have mentioned people or anybody, but when I was talking about the use and misuse of power of incumbency, I meant the executive at both the central and the state level. And I was even asking us to relate to issue of media with our various states and see whether those executives are granting equal access to both the ruling and opposition parties. So it's just a question of language. So I thank you so much for the attention.
Please give the mic to Prof. and that will be the last question we take for today. I'm sorry for that, please. We're working with time. So please give the mic to Prof. Give the mic to Prof. So we might Prof will ask his question. And thereafter, our VC. Yes, and thereafter, our VC to comment to the class lecture this afternoon.
Yeah, said without us responding. Yes, I will ask you. In 2011, when ASUS officially heeded the call of Professor Omotola, because he was our former president, to partake in the election, ASUS partook in official capacity as ASUS or a union ASUS. And I will tell you the experience some of us had led to his list of demand that should be done to and from 2015 to date, ASUS has officially gone off election matters in Nigeria. So everybody goes around saying ASUS is partaking, ASUS is no longer partaking as a union. But individual lecturers have the right as citizens of this country to partake in any activity they are interested in. So please don't let us misconstrue a lecture from 2015, and I stand there with all sense of seriousness and authority. I was a chairman of ASUS up till last year February, of the University of Ibadan, the great University of Ibadan for that matter. Now on the issue of the negligence in the electoral, here my returning officer in Ibadan Southwest, and that's the largest local government in Oyo State, and it's one of the most problematic. I was the last person that delayed Governor Admiralty. Yeah, there are issues. That election that returned took us 2 days. We didn't finish until Monday, and election. The whip of the president had a meeting with the electoral officer, the local government, and the representative of the party. And one person protested that their party logo is not on the ballot paper. I want us to listen to this. One thing you said, which I want young people to do, which I want young people like me, sorry, I'm too young, to take home is that if you don't believe in anything, you have no right to be elected. You'll be tested at all points. I never knew I was being tested that weekend. So I insisted, then the returning officer can make the pronounce. I said, okay, we'll cancel this.
when the election was held, we have got the gubernatorial election, the state house of assembly, and the two house of rep elections that we have to shift over because of the party's complaint. So instead of collecting 3, we are collecting 5. That's why we have to take it in Monday. Believe you me, it's parties that complain about their ballot paper not being on their logo, not being on the ballot paper, never presented a candidate. That's where I'm going. Because then the chairman of the national came and said, doctor, I was not yet pronounced a professor then, 20 days ago. Say, you pass our test. All of them colluded. They thought I would say, no, go ahead. That would be problematic. All of them colluded to say, okay, let's see how this man will resolve this matter. Not only that, don't get that fact that they didn't field any candidate, they still had votes. So you see, those of you that are in the political sciences, you have a lot of work to do. Citizenship education. How did you vote for a party that doesn't even field the candidate? They still had votes. So when you look at this election trouble, don't think it's just one straight line thing. A lot of people are involved. I have also taken off. Once my video said no, I wouldn't do anything with that. But people still partake in that. But that is not the comment I want to make. So please, when you come to ASU, yeah. You should in your house, got one of that didn't believe for the body. Will you stop looking? No. So it is for us to say that there should be institutional strengthening our institutions so that those that go offline will be caught. Even if it takes 5-10 years to catch them, the fact that people know that they will be caught will restrain them from constituting any nuisance in the election process. Progression. The man lost from 20 something to 100 and something. I say, hey. But there was also another video, the same video last week, of widows holding one piece of one chicken. In Oyo State, a candidate distributed one 4 weeks old to widows. That's an insult. And they were thinking for him. Just one piece, 4 weeks old. The weaponization of poverty is an issue for you experts in political science or election matters to know. The same Senate that will take within 2 days, first, second, and third reading. It took the Senate less than a week, first, second, and third reading. But up till now, the discussion of state policing has not seen the light of the day. The same Senate, whatever pleases them, the president wants to borrow money. 1, 2, 3, the first, second, and third reading will take place within a week. Both houses will sit and pass it and will never be taken seriously. That is why I'm saying let our institution be more strengthened. We will expect you experts to do that. Once again, I thank the organizer, is my very good friend, for bringing this discussion to the fore. I thank you. I thank everybody for accepting to hold this. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking your time.
Thank you very much, sir, for that. Okay, should we go forward? All right, moving forward, I would like to welcome our Vice-Chancellor for a brief speech on something. He has something to say as regards to the lecture we have this afternoon.
First, I would like to look at Chief Professor. Second, I'd like to specially recognize the presence of one of the critical stakeholders in ADUN. He's the chief of the community there, Agba, Barrister Jules. Thank you very much for coming. Next time, we are going to involve a larger community, because these intellectual exchanges are not just for us alone. It's part of our duty to the communities around us. Invite people from the community. That I'm busy does not mean that surrender my kind of intellectual engagement. So I want to engage on two issues. First, Professor Omotola has raised the issue and given us statistical data that says we Nigerians trust our pastors more. Perhaps we should deploy them for island services. Yes, the pastors, the imams, you know why you are reacting like this? It will trigger my second discourse. But if data, we are scientists, if data is showing a particular thing, you have to begin to kowtow to it. Because we are dealing with the issue of trust. I fact that you raised the issue of us, and as you raised it, from there I said it's the issue of my generation, not this one. And I've said it before, I made bold to say that my generation of the academia took ASU, revived it, repackaged it, and turned it into a credible machine for sustained struggle that tried to and succeeded in restoring the dignity of the university system. It is on that platform and what it used to represent that made ADUN Management let me call on my colleagues to help. When he called, people like us beckoned. I participated once. After then, I refused to participate because again of my experience in the field. You know, when you shouted or reacted to the issue of pastor, ask yourself why. Why will you react? And that brings me to the submission of Tony Fanola. Fanola argues that incipient in democracy is divisiveness. By the nature of democracy, it is right. If I ask for her to stand, two of us are contesting for something amongst people. Perhaps the first thing she will throw up with the gender. Oh, she's a woman. Other women, she will remind everybody that I'm a man. If I'm a Muslim, she will say she's a Christian. If both of us are Christians, she may say she's a Catholic. I am not a Catholic. If I'm a Catholic, she's Pentecostal. In other words, it accentuates our differences. And we must recognize that. Falola eloquently exposes on that. Go to society. The trouble with American racism today because Obama emerged as president. And after his emergence, the blacks have not known peace. Why is Lagos State suddenly remembering their properties being destroyed? Why? It is because of politics, it is because of democracy that the strong man Tinubu will lose his stronghold. His explanation for it is that it is because of those from the southeast. And we saw that in a number of clips of videos and so on. Not to talk about religion. Did they not play a role to say that, oh, it's a Muslim ticket? I say these things because as scholars we must again use our binoculars to interrogate these clues. Part of what has caught my interest in recent times is why are we, the elite, the very well schooled, we are all reclining back to traditional institutions. In my father's time, they existed, but they were beginning to wane in influence. If you read Obalekime and Afibu, what you find is that there was detached monarchically. Today we are all inclining towards them. Why? Is it because we are not getting satisfaction from our democratic practice? Perhaps we will become more detached. But now what we're seeing is that they are becoming a rallying point for the various ethnic grievances. I'm not making final conclusions. I'm only saying, can we look at these things closely and think, and perhaps use our tools of scholarship to study them? At the time, I began to think seriously, but he addressed it. Is it possible that what Africa needs, I won't say military regime, but perhaps an enlightened theology? It may be funny, but I'm talking as a historian. Tell me that society that developed the United States in its earliest years, what were their presidents like? A good number of them came from the military. I am not promoting the military. Don't get me wrong. That's why I said dictatorship need not necessarily be military. Look at the Asian tigers. The one you that we always point at. Have you read his story? And what the riot act he read to his closest friends? If you know you can't comply, leave the country. Don't go to Google. I am throwing this up and that up for us to begin to also engage. You know, when Mr. They always copy what they have that suits their society. Can we be our own society and see, can we begin to create something indigenous to us? Like I always say, when you meet an American, because you should get a car. Son, what car do you think we should? Everybody will. All the cars I've bought in my life, I just drive it into my compound. My family will shout, "Hey, Daddy, I've bought a car." There's no pre-discussion. It's not about democracy, it's an attitude. We remember democracy when it's time for election. After electing, if we ever did the election properly, we all forget it. So we are not actively in the democratic space. And that is why when the politicians, after they have come in, it is like bye-bye for another 4 years. We don't engage. Lastly, he has talked about values. I was here earlier today. We spent about 2 hours plus with the students. And I told them, part of it is value. Their values are so deep. They cannot stand up fairly for what they believe in. You don't have to be abusive. You don't have to be confrontational. That we stood up. I always say my generation is the Ali must go generation. You remember the Ali must go protest that turned things round. That same generation were the ones that came into ASU and turned ASU round. Most of us are getting it. When I saw the Assisi ASU in Abuja, when the ASU agreement was formally being adopted, and they called quite a number of us. We really talk well. All those war dogs of those days have aged. But who and who? The younger generation. They are saying when Ogolobi came here, how they destroyed lands, how they destroyed. That's lamentation. You think those things, they did not try it with lands of those things. They stood firm. Now, you see Nan's president, only 54-year-old man, beards and white teeth in all that. They will be referring to him as Nan's president. You cannot go and take back your opinion. Of course, you are not students. But what I'm saying is that in the younger generation, principles don't matter. Anything goes. You don't want to. And he made the point about being something very was. I did in elections. Don't forget we participated in JAM. Isn't it? When JAM needed credible people, they came to the university. They say, Vice-Chancellor, get your constituency. When it comes to election, it's a different cup of tea. Academy tells you, you go there as individuals. Let me also tell you that if you look at the records properly and you do a statistical analysis, the campuses still remain the hub of the most credible Nigerians. What is highlighted are those who did not do well. The story of those who have done relatively well, nobody talks about them. It is taken for granted. And you know that when one finger carries oil, easily it can soil the others. You will agree with me that we need more of such intellectual engagement, not just on politics, on society, on economy. How is America's attack of Iran affecting us in Nigeria? Have we sat down one day to interrogate it? You saw me go wild yesterday, pursuing energy tips, because I know how much we pay now. Our bill has risen up to 15-16 million. And what we are recovering every month in terms of units bought is 1 million naira, 960,000 naira. Compare that to 60 million. And what we're discovering, starting with that, is amazing. They call it ADUN rights. Let me not go into that so that I don't spoil our night. Nigerians must stand up for Nigeria. Bottom line. Scholars must do more work and show scholarship using their tools of engagement to interrogate the country. And in interrogating the country, seek for possible solutions. I know that over 35 years ago, I have argued in my one of my write-ups, the poverty of African philosophy. That poverty is that they are not using Africa's historical experience, political experience, to fashion out a political system that will suit our people. You heard what Austin said. He said they got to contact his father. If my children of voting age gather in ADUN and it's election time, and I call them and say, none of you should go out today to vote, they will obey me. In the US, you can't do that to your family. You can't do that to your children. If you know that culturally, that is how we are, what form of political system are we fashioning to suit that our cultural disposition, such that we can exploit it for political, social, and economic development? Let me leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for our Vice-Chancellor. One thing I will take from your speech, sir, is democracy is an attitude. Thank you very, very much for that. To conclude the section of this lecture, I would like to welcome one of our own, and that is the person of Professor Omotola Junior, for the closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your hands for the professor for his closing remarks.
The Vice-Chancellor, permit me to stand on the already established protocol. My task here is very simple. I'm supposed to give a vote of thanks at the end of this event. Our first vote of thanks will go to God, the creator of everything, our sustainer, our provider, for giving us this opportunity of living today to listen to this lecture. We are grateful to God. We are also grateful to the Vice-Chancellor and his management team for what he's doing to ADUN. He may not have all the resources yet, but from the few steps that he has taken in just 1 year, we know that something definitely is happening to this institution. He made 2 comments. This is just the beginning, and like he has promised us, more of this will come in time. I imagine that those of us that are here will take the message out. Next time when we hear that there's a public lecture, the entire community will come in here. This is we are not taking this for granted. We thank you immensely for the permission you granted that the Faculty of Arts and Management Sciences, my own faculty where I belong, should start this process. As historians, we have documented this, and the story shall be told that public lectures started from the Faculty of Arts under the current Vice-Chancellor. We also want to thank the Dean, who dropped the idea
Several times I've had conversations with him. Not too many of you know that me and the dean go a long way. As a matter of fact, he was my student from the undergraduate to the PhD level. I am particularly the way he's managing the faculty. And you know, he consults. Every other time, he either comes down and I go up like that. Dean, sir, you are my dean, even though you were once my student, I'm still loyal. Incidentally, I'm HOD under the faculty. So I'm still loyal. Thank you very much. I want to thank the lecturer. Omotola may not recall that we first encountered ourselves in 2006. He was a very young man, firebrand. Listen. In addition to I met him and I saw that this is a future scholar. He has cut his teeth very well, and I'm so happy. I read him every other time. And I was looking for an opportunity to see him after close to 20 years. Yes, about 15 years. Let me just say 15 years. And he's coming here at the time that I am here on sabbatical. You are both welcome. You are not sure the place is fine, and I have no doubt while you were lecturing that you knew what you were talking about. But let me disclose a secret. The guest lecturer has toned down a little bit. Toned down a little bit from his leftist disposition. And that was why when he was talking about a lot of things there that we'll be talking about in class is not exactly what we see on the field. I understood it. He's talking from a point of view of not just regret but lamentation. The theories we will propound in the class and society when we argue that the military should not join politics. But the military is part of that same society that is corrupt. So why will the military be affected by the pathologies of the larger society? That was what happened to us. Beginning from our members, several times we spent hours debating me and the Vice-Chancellor about the kind of ASU leaders that we have today. No integrity, chasing after money. Once an ASU chairman begins to negotiate contracts, those days we were never doing that. We follow on the heels of the Vice-Chancellor's era. And even up to that point, there was still credibility. But a lot has changed. So, Shola, we thank you very much for the lecture you have given us. And we pray that even as you tone down, don't tone down completely. Some of us have your records. We will remind you when you overtone down. Thank you very much for that lecture. I want to thank our very senior professors that are here for finding time to come. It takes a lot of efforts as a professor to sit for hours in a place because you are thinking of research, looking at students' projects and all that. We appreciate you and we thank you for coming. Also, deans that availed their presence at this occasion, directors that came. You can see Situa and Professor Omotoso professors who came and sat to listen to this lecture, even though some of them are not directly in the political science orbit from which Shola stood tall and pontificated. I welcome all of you and I thank you for participating. To our students, lecturers and students, like the VC has said, this is just the beginning. More of this will come. It's just for you to avail, to take advantage of the opportunities as they throw themselves up. Finally, I want to thank you and then also our MC for answering properly. You are growing and you are doing it very, very well. We return all glory to God. Thank you very much.
There's another round of applause for the prof. We will not close this event without doing this particular right now. Prof has come and he has given the lecture with karate, and we've gained a lot from the lecture of Prof. And it is in our nature and manner as an university, when you go and invest in all of this, you also find a way to also present something to you that you appreciate and say, yes, I came and they responded in return. So, Prof, at this time we want to give you something. And our own Vice-Chancellor will be able to present our package from the university community to you.
On behalf of staff and students of Admiralty University, I'd like to present this token gift of our colors to always remind you of today that you came pontificated and to show that we all appreciate you and appreciate the ideas you espoused. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for the presentation. Please, after the close of the event, you take a group photograph. We can start with the guest lecturer and our VC, then the guest lecturer, the VC, and the dean of the Faculty of Arts. Then after that, the guest lecturer and the professors and the directors that are here present before the general house. So please, let's stand up to our feet as we take the closing prayer and go straight to the photograph. All right, I hope that you know the custom prayer is the 10 stanza of the national anthem. So please, let's take it together. We will go with all creation. God is our request. Help us to give the nation where man is oppressed. And so peace and plenty, Nigeria will be blessed. Amen. Thank you very, very much for coming to this first public lecture organized by the Faculty of Arts and Management and Social Sciences. So please let's go outside and take a good photograph, please.